welcome to Striking Foundations. Today we're going to work some of the most important and fundamental strikes that you can have in your game. The straight punches, right? The straight stuff right down the middle. Super important, a must-have across the board. So let's go ahead and get bowed in. 1, 2, 3. Nice. So first we are going to warm up a little bit. We'll get to our movement in a second, but you always want to loosen up your shoulders, upper body a bit, especially if you're going to be striking, boxing, goes for kicking as well. You know, loose shoulders, getting everything moving on the upper body. So start with the shoulders, maybe some paddles, bringing one back, one down, like I'm trying to reach behind me. Paddles, one up, one back. Don't force it, don't try to rip your shoulder out of socket. Then we have big hugs, right? I am going to, like I'm trying to grab my shoulder blades. I can alternate which arm goes on top. Big hugs, big hugs. If you want a little extra, look, you take the bottom elbow, you can drive it up nice and slow. Gives a good lat stretch. So I'm hugging, taking the bottom elbow, and I'm driving it up towards the ceiling a bit. So that's gonna help me stretch out the lats. Now, a little bit of twisting. So I'm gonna relax the lower body so that my heels are light and they're not planted into the mat. You don't wanna twist when your feet are planted into the mat. So nice and relaxed lower body, so my knees and hips are nice and loose. My heels are light, I'm not stuck to the ground. And I am just going to rotate. Rotate to the right, rotate to the left, so that I am twisting. Almost all striking involves some twisting. See what I mean about the heels? My heels are coming off of the mat because knees don't twist. You know, you need your ankles and everything to be moving. You need your heels to come off the mat. So that'll help me with the upper body. You can do some more, you know, you can always roll the wrists. If you got something else that's tight, you can shake it out, you know, shake your fingers out, roll your wrist, whatever else is tight. You know, you always wanna, I think in the beginning, more than stretching, things like that, we just wanna move a little bit. Move everything around, get the creaks out, especially if we're gonna do something like striking. Get everything nice and loose before we hurt ourselves. Now, we can work on our movement, which is always a good way to warm up and pay some dividends to your actual striking, your actual technique. So always wanna be in my good stance, my shoulder width apart. I have one leg in the front, one leg in the back, more or less shoulder width. My rear heel off the mat, right? We're gonna rev the engine as opposed to flat. Everything's heavy, weight on the heel. I want this heel to be up, nice and springy. You know, especially with that rear foot, I'm almost always on the ball of my foot, using the ball of my foot, my big toe to help me move around. You know, in general, we don't want to be super flat-footed and heavy. You know, as we move around in striking, we shouldn't hear a lot of like feet slapping. So, movement, very simple. We'll just start by up and down, you know, forwards and backwards. So you're from the side, forwards, backwards. So all we're doing here when we move is quite simple. Whatever direction I want to move, that foot moves first. So if I want to move forward, my lead foot will take the step. I bring the rear foot with me. You know, especially if you're just getting warmed up, if you're a little less comfortable, it can look just like that. Step, step. Now backwards, right? We just talked about whatever direction I want to move, that is the foot that moves first. So I'm moving backwards. So my back foot now takes the step. Bring everything with me. Notice my heel did not touch the ground. Step, step. So forwards and backwards, that's all it is. You can put a number on it if you want. 5 forwards, 5 backwards, doesn't really matter, 3 and 3. You can pick a space, if you have a hallway outside, one stick to another stick, doesn't really matter. I'm just forwards and backwards, so that'll be the first part of your movement. Just forwards and backwards. Starting from the side. Forwards and back. Also add our right and left. Very simple. Once again, whatever direction I'm moving, that foot moves, other foot comes with me. So I'll go to the right foot moves, left foot catches up. Left foot moves, right foot catches up. So we did the up and down, right, forwards and backwards. Now we can add our movement on a square, or I guess a cross would be more accurate, right? I'm going to go just one step in each direction. I'm going to take a step forwards, backwards, right, left. It could be in any order. You're just going to do one at a time, right? So it doesn't really matter what you start with. I'm going to start by stepping forward. So I'm just going to move on a cross. I have this nice line under me. You don't have to have that, but it can't help because it will show you as well that my feet are nice and wide. I got my good shoulder width apart. So this is moving on a cross. So don't get too caught up into which one you're starting with. It doesn't have to be forwards, backwards, right, left. I'm not terribly worried about that. I'm just picking, one, and then I'm hitting them all, right? Whichever one I start with. Let's say I start backwards. I'm just going to go backwards, forwards, right, left. If I want to start forwards, I just go forwards, backwards, right, left. So the idea is just one at a time. I'm just, each direction. So moving on a cross. So we've had the moving up and down. We have moving on a cross. Once you're comfortable there, continue with your warm-up by just mixing it up. A little forwards, a little backwards, a little to the right, a little to the left. If you want to add a little extra, maybe you add some doubles in there. I take 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. So you're just going to move around a little bit. Forwards, backwards, right, left, mix them up, right? Try not to have too many rules in your head. Just try to keep it natural. Keep your hands up, elbows in. You can still move on the square, right, if that's comfortable for you. Every now and then, maybe I do 2, right? I go 2 steps forward. Step, 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 step. As we move, this will help you a lot with your striking. A couple things you want to avoid. I don't want to drag my rear foot. They call it like the zombie drag. We see that a lot with people, where they step, drag, step, drag. We don't want to drag that rear foot. I'm actually taking a step with that thing. Taking step forward with the lead foot, step forward with the rear foot. Step, 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 step. I don't want to drag. I also don't want to hop, right? That's another thing we see. I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's not a gigantic step. Remember, as we move, not just as a drill, if we were really fighting or sparring, they are small steps. If I want to go faster, I just take a bunch of them right in a row. Oh, I can just do a bunch. Forwards and backwards. I don't want to start leaping or doing anything crazy. So that's your good warm-up. You got your shoulders nice and loose. You can always add push-ups to that, pull-ups. I think nice light workout to begin with. I mean, you could jog, honestly, anything that gets you nice and loose, get some blood flowing, and then start with some movement work. Down the line, the cross, and then we have where we just mix it up. Maybe add some doubles. So we're just moving around in our good stance, not worrying about punches or anything yet. All right, so now we're gonna work on getting our hands up and in place, and then we'll be ready to work on our straight punches. So this is something that's very important, something that I struggled with for a long time, with my shoulders getting tired, and also with my elbows flaring out, something that, like I said, it took me a long time. So it's definitely something that I still work on. So certainly something that, all of you guys and gals should be working on as foundation students. So something that we can definitely do on our own, and that you should always be doing as part of your warming up, and all of your work is working on that proper footwork, getting everything in the right spot. So our feet we already dealt with. Now work on the hands. You want to end up looking like this. Elbows in tight, hands up above, the nose, the eye line, somewhere up in here. I don't necessarily need to make clenched fists, but I do want my hands up. That's where we're gonna throw our good straight punches from. That's where we're gonna best be able to defend ourselves as well, right? If their hands are already up here, it's easier to block. This is where we also want to throw from. So we might as well already have them up here. There's no reason to have our hands way down here doing crazy stuff. Especially if we're close enough within that striking distance, we want to have our hands up. So, biggest thing is elbows in and hands up. But we have a few things that can help us. One, I want my elbows and my arms to basically rest on my ribs, right in here, rest on my lats. So what I'm gonna do is reach out in front of me like I'm stretching and let my arms go dead to follow my ribs. They're resting on my ribs, no space. This also helps my shoulders not get tired. Instead of me holding my arms up like this, you can see there's lots of space. I want my elbows resting, right? That puts everything right about here. Then I'm gonna do two things. One, I'm gonna roll my shoulders up and forward. And I'm gonna tuck my chin. So, I didn't really move my hands. My hands are like right here. So I'm not gonna pick my hands up because that brings my elbows and everything away from my body. So I'm here, elbows resting on the ribs. And then remember two things. I roll my shoulders up and forward, and I tuck my chin. So my hands basically stay in the same spot, but I move my shoulders and I tuck my chin, and that puts them up nice and high. So that's where we want to be. My elbows and everything in tight. It helps me defend myself. It's also going to be what drives my straight punches forward, right? My elbow basically getting pushed out by my ribs will make me have a nice, strong jab and across, or nice, strong, straight punches. So, out. Now we are all ready to throw our straight punches. We have our feet set, we got our hands up, elbows in. So they're just straight out, whether it's the left, the right, the front, or the back. It's essentially the same punch, with some very slight differences. Straight punches. Especially when you're just working this at home, we're not working on our power. We just want to work on being nice and long and loose so that our arms are extending all the way out. Oh, that's very important on our straight punches. We want every bit of that length. It will also help with the power of our punches. the effectiveness of our punches. So, with both of these straight punches, essentially what is happening is I am driving my hip and shoulder forwards toward the target. Like I'm trying to point my shoulder at the target. Obviously my hip needs to be involved. I can't just point my shoulder. I can't just point my hip. They are both going to they're going to kind of tag team. I'm going to lead with the hip. I'm going to drive my hip towards the target. That starts to bring my shoulder towards the target. And then I just let my arm straighten out. Goes for the front or the rear. Rear one, I'm driving my hip and shoulder towards the target. Boom. So that whichever side I'm punching with, that side hip, that side shoulder is going to end up in the front. So for the jab, it's already in the front, but I'm going to poke it out even farther. I'm going to drive my hip and shoulder forward, let my arm extend, bring it back. For the rear, I'm going to drive my hip forward, which drags my shoulder around. Boom. Throw the rear hand. So it's mostly from your hips. Your hips lead the way, everything else just goes along for the ride. That's essentially what happens on our good straight punches. Coach Whittier describes it like a whip. My arm is nice and noodly and relaxed. I drive it forward, it's like a whip, and it cracks right at the end to become my jab. It's essentially the same thing with the right hand. So as long as we're moving our hips and shoulders, the rest is going to hopefully take care of itself. Some keys right at the end. I do want to make sure I'm driving my first two knuckles at the target, these two knuckles, like I'm trying to point them at what I'm punching at. That's what they call turning your punch over, right? So if I had an open hand as I go to punch, it's essentially going to rotate all the way over. So I go out, it's going, it's rotating, basically all the way. So if I had my hand open, my thumb will end up pointing down at the ground. Everybody's arms and everything set up a little bit differently, but that's going to happen to some degree. Some are going to turn over more than others, but I do want to kind of corkscrew towards the end. But as we do this, I don't think you need to think about all of those individually. If you just think about pointing those two knuckles at the target, I think it'll help a lot of your technique almost automatically, right? You don't have to think about every piece, step by step by step every time you throw a punch. If you just think about pointing those two knuckles at the target, it tends to take care of itself. So it's mostly hips, which drags my shoulder around, and then I just let my arm go, whether it's the front hand or the rear hand. Jab, cross. So feel free to just throw some of those, nice and loose, nice and long. Another thing that will help you, if you are good at keeping your elbows in, some good advice that I heard is trying to think about driving your elbow out away from your body, right? Especially with the rear hand. If my elbows are in tight, I wanted to think about using my body to kind of force my elbow to go forward. So I really have to drive my ribs out and my hip out, so I'm trying to launch this elbow forward. Whoa. That will help me on both the jab and the cross. I think especially the one in the back though. So I'm here, I'm driving everything forward as I try to launch my elbow and fist forward. Extend, pull it back. So you have the jab, the cross. So I'll have some drills you can do with a partner at the end. But, this jab and the cross is something you can work around the house, anytime. You don't really need any gear, nothing like that. Inside, outside, it doesn't matter. You can always move your feet like we did before in the warm-up. I always have that stuff I can do. Forwards, to the side, mixture of all of those things. Then I can start to add the jab with every step. Every time I take a step, I can jab. Then I can start to add the jab cross if I want. I can step, and jab, cross, cross. So, what I would like you to do, you've done your good warm-up, you've moved yourself around a lot. After that, spend a little bit of time really just getting some good, clean reps without moving much. You know, just one arm at a time, throwing some left hands. Shh, shh, shh. Throwing some right hands. Shh, shh, shh. You start putting them back to back, right? That's what makes it a jab cross, but don't think of it as that much different. It's just jab, right into the left hand. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Just putting them together. As long as I'm getting good rotation on either side, good to go. So, you got your jab, you got your cross, you got your footwork. You know, that's enough to really get a lot of mileage, okay, with the jab and the cross. Then you start to put it together. Once you've done some of those dead reps, you add it just like we just talked about with the stepping, right? You can step and jab, cross, forwards, backwards. You can mix it up. But, you know, this is something that you'll need to work on for a long time. You're always trying to clean it up, always trying to make it natural and loose. I just wanted to show you a couple drills you could do to work on your jab cross if you have someone at home that can help you out. They don't need to know a ton. You really just need a box super hard, you know, make a lot of impact. We're really just trying to stay nice and long, touch something with the knuckles, touch something with the knuckles. So that's all we really need. So all your partner needs to be able to do is just show their palms more or less right in front of your face. You know, not way out here. Just have them keep their elbows in, both palms facing forward. You know, that's enough for now. It doesn't need to be one in front of the other. I mean, if they know what they're doing, they can do it super properly, but they really just need to be able to show you this, right? Not this, just right in front, both palms forward. So he could just stand there for me with both in the front, and I can just 1, 2, 1, 2. Similarly, if you have, you know, we have this suitcase pad over here, but it could be a pillow, sofa cushion, whatever you got. Just something to absorb a little bit. You know, once again, we're not working on destroying Coach Blackman, just giving him something to touch with my knuckles. So he can just hold it right up to his chest like this. Let's go about right here. So once again, it could be like a little couch cushion, pillow, you know, it doesn't have to be much. I just want to just be able to touch at the end of my 1-2. So my arm goes all the way out as much as it can, all the way out. You know, I don't want to be in here like this. Check your distance if you need to. Jab, cross. All right, so put this back down. Another thing we can do that you've all done if you've been in my class is line drills. So it's the exact same thing. All that's going to happen is Coach Blackman would start in front of me with his hands up. He takes like a little quarter step back, right? So he takes his step back. I wait for him to do that, then I step in and jab, cross. Then he takes another step. I wait for him to do that, and then I step in, jab, cross. Again, jab, cross. One more time. When we get to the other end, we just turn around. He goes this way, and now I'm right back to it. He takes his step back, jab, cross. Jab, cross. You can also do it with the suitcase pad. Works exactly the same. So he stands in front of me, he takes his quarter step back. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. All right, so if you come back, the biggest thing you can do to mess up, two things. One, he can take like a gigantic step back, which is not gonna help me, he's too far away. Or I'm gonna try to chase him, which is, you see you guys do a lot. I don't wanna do that, just relax. He takes his little step back, step in, jab, cross. All right, so that's a way we can work this at home with a partner. He doesn't need to know anything, just needs a body. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. No problem.
That's really all I need. That should be good other than that.
Yeah, I mean, I got everything else.
All right, man.